Aloha, everybody. This is Eva Andrade. I'm the host of the Triple F podcast. And I just want to give a disclaimer that today's show, we're going to be talking about some sensitive things. So if you have youngsters listening in the car with you or around you as you're watching this on YouTube, I just want you to be aware of that. So let's get started. Aloha, everybody. I'm Eva Andrade. And on this week's episode of the Triple F podcast, which is Faith and Family First, me and my co-host Jim Hochberg are going to be talking with Representative Bob McDermott about a very dangerous sex ed bill that's moving through the Hawaii legislature. So let's chat about that. Jim, welcome to the show today.
Well, thank you. Good to be back.
It's always good to sit across the table from you, Jim. You always keep me on my toes, and I appreciate that. Listeners and viewers, we've got some listeners from 94.9 on FM, KESU radio, and 1040 AM. So we welcome our listeners and our watchers, viewers on YouTube. And we're here.
Spotify.
And Spotify, yes. And so make sure you check out all of the past shows. Last week, 2 weeks ago, Jim and I talked about this issue when the bill started really gaining momentum. But today we decided to bring on somebody who's been in this fight on this, well, many issues he's been on our side. But on this particular issue, he's been a champion. So we'd like to welcome to the show Representative Bob McDermott. Welcome to the show, Bob.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Full disclosure, I've known both you and Jim for probably 25 years, going back to the mid 90s. Before we begin, just an overview, we often get criticized. Oh, this is all you guys focus on. This is, all your focus is on this gay sex or abnormal. It's not. We don't go looking for this stuff. I don't go spending my day say, how can I find something that's very controversial and will upset people? I don't. But it gets put in our face, and you either shut up and take it, or you say, hey, wait a minute, let's ask some important questions here, because parents own the school system, right? So what questions are we allowed to ask? Anything. And what should we be asking? So I guess I just want to throw that out there. We don't go looking for this stuff. We're the canary in the coal mine, if you will.
Well, and you're right. The parents do, quote unquote, own the school system, and you are a member of the House of Representatives. I would like to remind you, Article 1, Section 1 of the Hawaii Constitution does say all political power in the state of Hawaii is inherent in the people.
Well, and Bob
not just the school system.
Well, of course, and Bob is one of those representatives, and there are some representatives and senators that understand that the power is with the people, and so Bob does listen to his constituents. It doesn't mean that legislators always agree, because it's true that legislators have their own personal feelings when they come into an issue. But I do want to start with that, and I think, Bob, you made a really good point, is that you've been in this position representing District 40 for a long time. And so you have done a lot of work with the community. You have protected Keiki from getting involved with sex trafficking. I know that you've signed off on bills that would protect parents in a lot of different ways. So you're right. This didn't just fall, from the sky, and this is the one issue you're weighing in on. But so the bill we're talking about today is House Bill 1697. And the current draft, which is House Draft 1, is very interesting. And Bob, before we jump into the bill, I like to do this. I like to give our listeners and our viewers a little bit of heads up, that this kind of is not a new issue for you because of what happened with the very infamous Pono choices. So I thought maybe you could start with giving us a little bit of a background on the controversy of Pono choices and how parents really rose up on that issue.
Yeah, I guess that was about 2014 or 15, several years ago. And it was a sexuality education program. I'm not going to say sex ed, because that conjures up what people my age went through, which was just a basic understanding of human reproduction in the context of biology and pregnancy and disease prevention, very health oriented. That's no longer what goes on. It's now a sexual lifestyles, and all lifestyles and all behaviors are deemed equal, and they were in Pono choices. The difference between Pono choices and this bill is that there was actually a curriculum we could view, and so because of that, we could point to inaccuracies in black and white. And listen, whether it's Pono choices or this new bill, parents don't want it. Listen, I've knocked on thousands of doors, and parents don't want this stuff taught to their kids. They find it objectionable.
The one thing that I remember the most about Pono choices was the scientific, biological, incorrect information. The thing that I can't get out of my memory is Pono choices had an instruction piece that said that the rear end was a sex organ, part of the reproductive tract. And that's just bizarrely not true.
Yeah, and for those listeners and viewers who are not from the state of Hawaii, Pono, P-O-N-O, it's loosely translated in Hawaiian to mean righteousness or something that would be good and something pure.
Good for everybody.
So to have a name like that on curriculum that is so controversial like this. But I think the other point that I'd like you to make, Bob, is how easy is it here in the state of Hawaii for you to get your hands on the curriculum that is being taught in the public school system?
Well, at that time, we couldn't get a copy of Pono choices. They wouldn't give it to us. Even though I was a sitting legislator, they wouldn't trust me unless I had the training to go through it. Yet they're teaching it to 10-year-olds. Now, just take a moment here. How do we know 10-year-olds is the age? Well, that's the age they start the sexuality training. Well, in school. And those are we have 7 or 8 programs they can choose from. I reviewed them all several years ago. Only one of them, called Health Teacher, gets a passing grade, which also happened to be the oldest program, published in 1989 or 90. So it was not this new age stuff. In fact, they had this strange notion back then that, and let me quote here, the only safe sex is sex with a condom in the context, listen to this, of a long-term monogamous relationship. My goodness.
No.
How radical is that? That is now gone. Right, Jim? You won't find that anywhere on any Planned Parenthood initiative. And those are the guys who drive this. So let's be frank. Planned Parenthood wrote Pono choices in conjunction with a UH school official. They got some money from Obama administration.
But didn't the Pono choices, I'm sorry, didn't the Pono choices come from a mainland jurisdiction with a different name? It was from somewhere else?
Yes and no. They're all the same. It did from Chicago or somewhere, had a different inner city youth. It did have a different name, and they kind of modified it for Hawaii. That's why it was called Pono choices.
Right.
I lost my train of thought there.
So would you say that this sex training thing for 10-year-olds sounds to me like grooming or something?
Yeah. Well, first, Jim, you ask them, and I did in hearings. You're asking them, look, the age of penetration, it's 14. It's illegal to penetrate a child under 14. Of course, unless you're 15, I guess. There's like that 5-year window, right? But why are we teaching 10-year-olds if it's illegal to have penetration with anyone under 14?
Well, I think I think you're right, Bob, because I know during the Pono choice, during the time where this was coming up at the legislature, I remember there were testimony on some legal people that were asking that very question. Why was it the legal ramifications of what some of this behavior? Why was that not included?
Well, let's go to Jim's grooming for a moment. But why do they teach 10-year-olds? Because as Planned Parenthood says, and I quote, they need the services.
It's you did go ahead.
So Jim said there's a grooming. Yes, when you look at it in this context, we tell the kids that all sexual behaviors are of equal value, and there's nothing that they can do or not do that has little or no redeeming value. Everything is the same, all sexual behaviors. So in order to keep that going, we omit any elevated risks from some of these anomalous behaviors, right? And if we were in a situation where I felt I need to be explicit with this, I would. But right now, we'll just say anomalous behaviors are the same as male-female reproduction, with or without a condom, right? And so some of these behaviors, the HIV prevalence is off the charts if you have unprotected sex, as opposed to a heterosexual situation. But they don't release those figures. They omit those elevated disease risks because they say it'll create a negative impact on that behavior. Well, no kidding. There's a reason you're not supposed to do it. It's not natural. Your body wasn't set up for that.
And
right?
so, but the interesting thing is what you're talking about when you say they, in the context of Pono Choices, it was the Department of Education. Well, this House Bill 1697 is the state legislature putting that rule in the statutes. Yeah. That you can only use positive and accurate info.
And I'll tell you what's interesting.
Positive and destigmatize. Yeah. That's the other key word, Jim. So if you put it in a positive fashion, in order to destigmatize, you have to omit the elevated risk profile.
Or any other not positive information.
Exactly. Well, and I find it very interesting because if you go to the Department of Education website right now, there's a link that says Pono Choices is not dead. So in spite of all the hard work you did, Bob, and you got a lot of information out into the community, parents really rose in a big way back then.
They didn't want it.
They didn't want it. And and you brought up a lot of questions. So what they did at that time was they created like a coalition, like a task force to kind of review it to see if there were any problems that were going to correct it. So on their website right now, you can click on a link that says Pono Choices is not dead. And Bob, as we move into this new HB 1697, you're going to find this very interesting. As Jim mentioned, there's a difference between what the DOE does and says and what the legislature is trying to accomplish in the bill.
But the bill is making the DOE change its position. That's the problem.
And the DOE now on their website, in referring to Pono Choices, they have they want to strengthen parent awareness of and role in sexual health education. Everybody agrees with that. They want to change the current requirements to provide parents an option to opt out of sexual health education to an opt-in. So they see how important it is for parents to choose. If they want all this additional stuff that they're talking about, parents should opt in to do it. They want to provide a customizable template for opt-in parent letters. They want to require parent notification letters to offer an opportunity for parents to review materials or discuss activities with the teachers or administrators. Everybody agrees. They want to require parent notification letters to offer an opportunity for parents to review materials. Oh, I said that already because I'm really making a very important point that parents should be able to review it. And they also want to recommend that schools implement a new curriculum, program, or other activity covering controversial issues, Jim's favorite subject. Proactively host a family night or information briefing to educate families. So basically, with all the work you did on Pono Choices, they're agreeing that parents are the first and foremost educators of their children. These conversations should be happening between the parent and the child, and there should be an opt-in.
And parents party night to learn about it.
So
that's all good stuff.
Instead of forcing everybody,
but they're probably not doing
to weigh in, right? We fast forward to this year, where now what they want to do is in this 1697, they want to do two things. They want to allow the Department of Education to train their teachers, and so the Department of Education is asking for $2 million to develop this curriculum. That's part one. Part two is they want all of this stuff added into the sex ed programs that are out and available in the schools. And Bob, I'd like you to address that. So what are they wanting to add? Because abstinence, as they say in the bill, is bad. Abstinence education doesn't work. It's horrible. All the kids are just freaking out because they're getting bad information, so they need all this stuff.
But it doesn't work because Planned Parenthood doesn't get a single customer from abstinence. It doesn't work.
No. In fact, there was a federal study that showed the only sex ed program that shows any significant reduction in activity, early onset sexual activity. It was a thing called, I think, Heritage Keepers or something.
Promise Keepers, something like
Promise
that.
Keepers, yeah. And that was a national program. And they, they don't work because they're stimulating the kids into instead of thinking about mathematics, thinking about sex and this new stuff. I can assure you, the legislators don't want the parents involved. And Jim can verify this. Every year we bring in more laws to lessen the authority that the parent has over their own child or the guidance.
Yep.
Jim, if I asked the deputy superintendent, I said, okay, if among other things, I asked her, I said, okay, if a 15-year-old student comes to you and you've been in the DOE 30 years and you're experienced, you're deputy superintendent, and this kid comes to you and says, I'm questioning my sexuality. I have these unwanted feelings and I'd like to talk to somebody about it. There is nobody, it's illegal to counsel that kid. All you can do is if they say, I think I might be gay, you can affirm that all day long and twice on Sundays. But if they say, I have unwanted feelings, can somebody, this is genuine, my parents aren't forcing me, I don't want these feelings, can someone help me? I'm confused, I'm an adolescent. Can someone help me with counseling? It's illegal. Can't do it.
Yeah.
They can see the baseball coach, I suppose, but that's the only person they can talk to.
No, and there's two cases right now, Bob. There's one in Florida where a mom's daughter was being counseled by some members of the school. They came to the conclusion that the mom and dad were dangerous in what they were preaching and teaching, and so they allowed this girl to go by another name at school. They didn't talk to the parents. The parents found out when the daughter tried to commit suicide. That's one case.
Well, wait, when you say go by another name, you mean that the girl was transgendering?
They were, yes. The girl was experiencing these feelings, and because the parents were deemed dangerous by the school, they continued to offer these services without parental consent, and the young girl tried to commit suicide. That's how the parents found out. But that's one case. There's a case that Heritage Foundation, they just interviewed a woman whose daughter committed suicide in California. This child was removed from the parents' home because the parents were trying to get mental health services for their daughter, who the school said was transitioning to become a male. And so they social services stepped in, removed this girl, and the mom was telling this heartbreaking story. And I think that really, I know you, Bob, I've known you for a long time, and that's where your heart is. Your heart is not only to protect parents, and of course that's their right, but you really do have a heart for these kids that are struggling with these unwanted same-sex attractions, or even it may not be same-sex, it just may be a gender identity
or
issue.
Any kind of issue. It's hard to grow up as a kid today. I mean, it was hard in the 70s, but it's way harder now.
Yes, and when you have, as you mentioned in this particular bill, where you can only endorse the behavior, this bill will not allow anything negative to be taught to the kids, then are the kids getting a true and accurate representation of these choices that they're making?
But it's a brainwashing program, right? When I bring these behaviors up, the Star Advertiser guy takes a quarter page to try and destroy me, saying, well, I'm so despicable for bringing them up. And then at the same time, he says parents can ask questions. I guess I can't ask any questions. As a parent of 8 and a grandfather of 10, I'm not allowed to ask questions. Or he just doesn't like the questions I asked. And why doesn't he like them? Because the answer is self-evident and obvious. And when you get to that, he doesn't, I asked the deputy superintendent on Zoom, we had 50 people on, I'm asking her some of these behaviors, and they're very gross, to be quite honest with you, but they're real and they exist. So you mean to tell me some 15-year-old smart aleck young kid isn't going to bring it up during sex ed? Hey, Mrs. Wilson, what about mouth on the anus, right? Is that positive? Well, yes, it is, Billy, as long as you wear a dental dam. I mean, are you kidding me? Right? No, you get hepatitis, ingesting fecal matter and all this stuff. They hate it when I bring that stuff up because it's real and it's gross. And most people are turned off by it big time. So that in this case, they attack the messenger and ridicule me. But parents who pay attention know that what we're doing and what you're doing, we're educated. We're giving them information. You know,
and for people watching this that don't know Rep. McDermott's background, the reason that he is so effective, he is still, because you can't stop being a Marine. And that's why I love the guy.
Yeah.
Well, and maybe now that we're having this discussion, I probably should have done a little disclaimer at the beginning. Parents, if you have young children listening or watching, you might want to just kind of be aware.
But we can put that at the beginning.
We can. But anyway, Bob. So let's.
And I'm sorry, I didn't want to go there. No, just to articulate what we're up against, and nobody says a word down here. And you know why? You said I was a Marine. Maybe I'm just too stupid, but they don't want to be attacked. They don't, man, you could imagine, they treated me like the guys who stole money.
Yeah. You know what, though? What you might want to consider, because this HB 1697 has crossed over and it's got a joint referral and then to WHAM, Ways and Means. Maybe in the meantime, you can call the people at the DOE because of your position in the government and ask them why they're supporting 1697, because it's completely contrary to the Board of Education's own controversial issues policy, and it's contrary to the Board of Education, the Department of Education rules on making sure students get all sides of issues they're learning. Why are they supporting this? And maybe, I doubt it, but maybe they will have different testimony at the Senate.
And Jim and I too, we've mentioned this on the show before, Jim and I get so frustrated because when we're trying to weigh in on these bills, we can't find the information that they're using in the introductions to the bill, right? We talked about that.
The legislature finds that the moon is made out of green cheese.
Yeah, and we don't know where they're getting this. But I want to touch in on this because, Bob, this was you. See, I remember hearing that you had were being forced to vote, and Jim was there with me, and they were pushing you to vote on this bill, and you're like, Jim and I were laughing because you're like, how can I vote on this? There is no bill in front of me for me to vote on, right? They're expecting you to take notes on the amendments.
That was in a conference committee.
It was assisted suicide.
That was that one that went around and it kept rescheduling the hearing because they couldn't write the bill.
Well, it's you know what we find in Hawaii's legislature is, okay, I'm not bashing all of Hawaii's legislature because these men and women, they work really hard and they're beat up by everybody, right? No
I think it's fair
side.
To say every legislator has done something good while they've been
there. I appreciate, and I will say this publicly, I appreciate that every legislator has said yes to serve this community. And that's a huge thing. And so, you know, we definitely want to give props for that. But the point I'm trying to make is that it's a hard job and we want people to pay attention to what's happened at their house. You know, all of the decisions
Article
that
1,
are making,
Section 1 of the Constitution,
the power belongs
my friend.
to the people.
Yep.
So, you know, we just have a couple minutes left, Bob. What do you need parents to do right here in the state of Hawaii? And for those of you in other states, check, because this may be happening in your own state. So,
and you're asking about HB 1697.
Yes, 1697.
So with 1697, the most practical thing to do is find out who your senator is and call them and say you'd like to talk to them. They probably won't call you back, but if you're persistent, they will. And remember, you pay their salary. Okay, you're the boss. As Jim said, all power is from the people, and that's in the Constitution. So you could ask this person questions about 1697, see if they can answer them. And I'd refer you, I'm sure Eva has a website or something that they steer their folks to get engaged. Yeah, you know, I would ask them a question. Do you believe that these all sexual behaviors are equal and should be presented as such, while omitting the elevated risks of the very dangerous ones? I mean, some of this stuff, you know, HIV can still kill you.
Absolutely.
They have medicine now, but it's still dangerous.
And for those of you watching and listening, you can send a message to Representative McDermott at representativemcdermott@capital.hawaii.gov. especially if you want to give him some encouragement, because he gets beat up a lot, as he mentioned, by the media. Bob is used to getting beat up. So if somebody's watching this or listening and they're like, no, I really need to talk to that Bob guy. Well, you know what? He's open to hearing from you too. But the point is that each and every one of you, whatever state you're in, you have a right, a duty, and a responsibility to raise your voice. As Jim and I always says, first of all, because we're Christians and the Lord calls us to take our faith out into the community, but because representatives and senators like Bob, they need you to stand behind them. When they're standing up for these kind of things, they need to know that you're there with them. So make sure that you stay plugged in, as always, to hawaiifamilyforum.org. And there's hawaiifamilyadvocates.com if you want to get more involved in the electoral when it comes to elections. Jim can help you with that.
And if you sign up at hawaiifamilyforum.org, and Eva will be sending out notices of the Senate hearings on 1697, right?
Absolutely.
So you'll get a notice. They don't give you much time from the legislature, but you will get a notice. You'll be able to submit your testimony, and it's kind of all easy to be done electronically. So sign up with Eva and let her help you out.
Yep. And don't forget to like this video, subscribe, share it with your friends, have everybody talk about this. And as we end, we're going to just show you a quick video of the parents right here in the state of Hawaii that showed up at Hawaii's Capitol because Representative Bob McDermott asked them to. So we'll see you all next week. And Bob, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, guys.
Mahalo.
Mahalo.
Aloha. God bless.
Aloha.